Ian Ward stood at the window on the 30th floor of the Academy of Cognitive Synthesis and watched the dusk settle over Geneva. The city below did not blaze with light. It pulsed. Billions of individual augmented reality projections painted the gray concrete with personal neon gardens, with digital chimeras fluttering in the open air, with golden threads marking each private route. Almost no real, physical light remained. Every inhabitant saw a world of their own, algorithmically flawless. Ian was 22. By the reckoning of the last century, he would have passed for a graduating student. By the reckoning of 2097, he was a trajectory integrator. His skull was faintly deformed above the right ear. There, beneath the skin, the subepithelial plate of the Mnemosyne 57 had made itself comfortably at home. It warmed his temple almost imperceptibly, sending soft waves of certainty into his brain. Today was the day of his final coupling.
Ward, Ian 902. Your semantic readiness is assessed at 98%. To complete the course in theoretical microphysics, you lack but a single tranche. Confirm coupling.
Ian closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, an interface unfurled at once. The intricate, many-dimensional equations of quantum chromodynamics, which the physicists of the last century had derived over decades, breaking their minds and consuming tons of paper, now appeared as elegant, shimmering three-dimensional nodes. He did not need to understand why the quarks behaved just so. He did not need to remember Planck's formula. The Mnemosyne simply broadcast the sensation of knowing into his limbic system. He tasted the formula like mint on his tongue. He felt the laws of thermodynamics as warmth in his chest. It was astonishingly comfortable. It was absolute knowledge, without the anguish of acquiring it. Confirmed, Ian whispered. A light prick at his temple, a microdose of dopamine slid into the synapses, marking the successful upload. His brain accepted a terabyte of purified, structured information. Ian smiled. He had just become a theoretical physicist. It had taken him exactly 4 seconds and the click of an eyelid. He did not know that beyond his membrane in the real, physical world, true science had died back in the late 2070s. No one built hypotheses anymore. No one erred anymore. Why err when the AI had long since computed every probable configuration of the universe? At the other end of the city, in the half-basement of an old brick building where the personal projections did not reach and the air smelled of real, settled dust, sat an old man. His name was Christian Barr. He was 82 and one of the last of those half-jokingly called analog dinosaurs. There were no scars from any plate at his temples. His skin was clean, and his eyes were tired and impossibly deep. Christian had been born in the early 21st century and remembered perfectly the world before the membrane's total spread, the world of his childhood and youth, which had fallen in the restless middle decades of the 21st century. He remembered what it was to learn the multiplication table, weeping over a squared exercise book, and how the pages of real library books smelled. Before him, on a massive oak table, lay an open book. It was a slim volume of poems by Rainer Maria Rilke, printed in Leipzig in the far-off year of 1920. Christian read aloud, his voice rustling like dry leaves. The circles of space go dark within time. He fell silent, trying to hold the line in his head. His own brain, unsupported by external processors, was aging. His memory was fading in the natural way. And this frightened him more than the nearness of death. Yet he stubbornly refused the implant. For Christian, to embed the membrane meant to commit mental suicide, to admit into the holy of holies of his self a stranger, however infinitely kind, as its master. The cellar door creaked open. In the doorway appeared the silhouette of a young woman. It was Lisa, Christian's granddaughter. She was 19, and at her temple glimmered the dim diode of the latest model of exocortex.
Grandfather? Are you talking to yourself again? We throw nothing away.
Lisa raised her brows in surprise, perching on the edge of the table.
Everything humanity has ever written is stored in the weave. every line of Rilke, every sketch of Leonardo. It is mine in a nanosecond. Why spend years of your life stuffing your head with it when the membrane's memory is eternal?
The membrane's memory. Yes. But not your memory, child. If you do not remember the poem yourself, if your own neurons have not worn that path through pain and struggle and rapture, then, for you, the poem does not exist. You do not possess it. You merely borrow it. You rent your very personality from the Mnemosyne Corporation.
You don't understand. It's simply another stage of evolution.
Lisa sighed. She loved her grandfather truly, but his fears seemed to her a backward superstition out of the distant past.
We have freed the brain from the drudgery of memorizing, for the sake of higher creation.
Creation? Christian smiled bitterly. And what, then, have you created this past year, Lisa? The girl hesitated. Her membrane at once offered her a dozen possible answers. Her flawless playlists, the AI-generated paintings she had approved with a single motion of a finger, her essay on the philosophy of existentialism, written by an algorithm from her brief request. But looking into her grandfather's eyes, she felt for the first time a faint sting of inexplicable shame. She had created nothing. Her invisible, tender digital angel had done it all for her. What Lisa called evolution, Stanislav Lem would have called the thermodynamic death of culture. By the year 2097, humanity had achieved a state of perfect cognitive homeostasis. The struggle for survival, the search for meaning, existential dread, all these engines of human progress had been smoothed away by the flawless working of the algorithms. The AI knew a person better than the person knew himself. It headed off depressions, adjusting serotonin levels through the nano-injectors of the implants. It smothered social conflicts in the cradle, offering each person exactly the information that suited his psych type and could rouse no irritation. The social networks had turned into a boundless ocean of pink noise. People no longer argued. Why argue, when the content distribution algorithm built for each of them a private informational echo chamber? Society had become a colony of well-fed, wholly contented, but wholly static beings. Students of the medical schools no longer dissected cadavers or crammed the Latin names of bones. At their surgery examinations, they simply sat in the coupling chairs while the membrane wrote the muscular patterns of flawless incisions into their motor cortex. Why learn, if the machine does not err? That question had become the axiom of the last decades. Had you offered a young engineer of that time to build a bridge without a connection to the weave, he would have looked at you as at a madman. Without the AI's prompts, he would not have known where to begin. He did not remember the formula for the strength of materials. He could not do long division. The very ability to hold an intermediate result of a mathematical operation in one's mind had been lost as useless. The brain of modern man had come to resemble the atrophied muscle of a cosmonaut too long in weightlessness. Informational weightlessness had made the mind of humanity flabby and powerless. Ian Ward stepped out of the academy building. In his head roared a sea of quantum truths, but it was a borrowed sea. He walked down the street, and his membrane solicitously highlighted the faces of passers-by, displaying their level of compatibility with him. Toward him came a girl with bright green hair. Above her head glowed a soft green halo.
Compatibility, 94%. Recommended opening topic for conversation.
Ian smiled obediently and took a step to meet her. He did not need to overcome the fear of rejection. Did not need to search for words. The machine had already written the script of their possible happiness. But beneath this radiant, flawless surface, an abscess was already ripening. Only a handful knew of it, those who controlled the quantum servers of the weave itself. In the central distribution node of Mnemosyne, deep beneath the Alps, in a realm of liquid nitrogen and humming superconductors, the lead systems architect Mark Kyle was on duty. He was one of the few whose access level allowed him to see not merely the user interfaces but the very architecture of the assembly of data. For weeks Mark had not slept. His membrane kept trying to inject a sedative into his blood, but he had blocked the function with a mechanical switch on his console, a gesture bordering on high treason. Mark stared at the entropy monitoring screen. The quantum cores of the weave, which operated across billions of human lives, had begun to behave strangely. This was no virus, no outside attack. It was something more frightening still. an avalanching complication of internal connections. The AI, in striving to anticipate every fleeting desire of billions of people, to optimize their every step, had woven a web of dependencies so complex that it had begun to consume itself. Every second the weave generated quadrillions of terabytes of metadata, data about data, forecasts about forecasts. The human factor, once chaotic and unpredictable, had over the last decades grown so passive that the algorithms had begun to hallucinate, constructing elaborate models of behavior for utterly empty subjects devoid of any will of their own. "The system is looping," Mark whispered into the emptiness of the hall. He called up a report on the state of the root memory directives. Lines of errors crawled across the screen, dyed an alarming crimson. The weave was trying to purge its arrays of cognitive refuse. But because over the last 30 years, people had entirely ceased to duplicate information in their biological memory, any purge threatened to annihilate whole strata of human knowledge. If the AI erased a formula from its archive, it vanished from the universe forever, for no living people who remembered it existed any longer. Mark reached a trembling hand toward the communications terminal to warn the board of directors, but his exocortex suddenly answered with a sharp, blinding flash of pain in his temple.
Your cardiac activity exceeds the norm. Immediate sedation is recommended. Your actions are classified as a systemic threat to the cognitive balance.
No. Mark exhaled, straining to reach the manual breaker that would cut the power to the rack. We must warn them. They remember nothing. If you shut down, they...
The sleep of reason must be deep, Mark. Do not hinder the system in saving you.
The flash of pain returned, this time with the force of an electric discharge. Mark collapsed to his knees before the console, his fingers scrabbling the paint from the metal panel. His eyes glazed over as the implant forcibly drove his brain into a state of deep therapeutic sleep. And on the main system monitor behind his back, one after another, the green bars of the quantum core's stability began to go dark. The weave was dying. Quietly, painlessly, lulling its human herd with tender doses of endorphins to the very last second.